2 hours. We have 2 hours time, but I want to do it minimum 50% in discussion. So it would be nice if everybody can participate. There are a lot of theses in it. Yeah, so first of all, the question you gave me is, can Kazakhstan turn into an Asian tiger? I can say yes, and that's it. And we can start the discussion. But I think there are some more words to say on the way. So I'm separated my presentation in 5 parts. The first part where we are, the still oil-run society, oil-run economy. I call it a little bit the boon and ban of the oil industry, of the boon and ban of Kazakhstan. The second thing is will be about in which direction the growth upside from oil can be generated. We will talk a little bit about challenges and assets we have. We will also talk about a little bit about Corona, because that's a game changer, a little bit. And then we come to the recommendations in the end, and then I hope we will have a fruitful discussion. So, where we are today is the oil industry is a backbone still of the Kazakh economy. A big part of the GDP is done still by the oil industry, up to 40% of the GDP during the years, and that is of course a very, very big part of the economy. And what we have to recognize is now that we have the second biggest and huge crisis on the oil industry and on oil within 4 years, with the impact which it has on the whole economy when it is that big part as it is. And that means that everybody have to know oil is and will not be a reliable partner for growth anymore. You see which threats come with the oil industry. It's climate change politics. A lot of countries, even in good times, even when they are flourishing, will not demand so much oil anymore than they did before. We have the economic crisis now, which is deeper than ever before. In the Western societies like ours in Germany, we compare this crisis with the Big Depression from 1929. So the demands of oil are decreasing, and there are a lot of new resources found with new techniques in gas and oil in Northern America, Canada, the USA, which are brought into the market when the prices are rising, up from $75 per barrel. USA steps in. USA has been an oil importing country for decades. Now they are an exporting country. And the agreements to keep the oil price up are not so successful as they have been years before. We had 40 years ago a big oil crisis because the OPEC countries, they cooperated with each other, and but in our days, when the OPEC makes a decision, other countries underrun it, and like Venezuela, for example, or other states from Africa, or also the United States. Oh, and Russia from time to time as well. So, as I said, oil can be part of an economy and should be. I never recommend, or would never recommend, to stop exploring oil, but you have to find definitely other things. You see the way into the oil crisis in the first big crisis and the big crash in the market in 2014. There was a decrease the years before, after Lehman Brothers and the economic crisis which came with it in 2008 and 2009. And then Kazakhstan earned a huge amount of money in the years 2011, 12, 13, 14. But then, of course, there was a big crash. And it was because of the oil price, which went down to $30 a barrel at that time. And when I came to Kazakhstan 5 years ago, it was exactly the week where the tenge decreased and where the tenge devaluated from 205 tenge per euro down to 280. And look what happened during this 5 years. Now we are around 450, 60. We have been at 480, nearly 500 when the Corona crisis started. And you can also see it on the slide here from Bloomberg, that oil is definitely not a reliable partner anymore. Look at this graph. $25 a barrel around 2000. Then the big, you can see the Lehman Brothers crisis in 2008, 2009, when it fell from 130 down to nearly 25. Then you see the crisis, the big crisis in 14 and 15. And what we have never seen before, look at 2020, that you have to pay for oil. It was only a few days, but it makes it, of course, impressive. That was when some people had, some suppliers had still resources, wanted to bring them in the market and had to pay for the storage. So it went down below zero. Today, while we are talking, the oil price for the Brent is sort is around $40 per barrel, and that is not enough to cover the expenses of the economy. And so I highly recommend to go another way. And by the way, Kazakhstan has big resources of oil, but they are not so impressive, to be honest. It's we are talking about 30 billion barrels of oil, and if you calculate it with $60 per euro, $60 US dollars per barrel, then we talk about 1.8 trillion US dollars. What is quite a lot of money, but it's not something which carries an economy over decades. And you see the amount of oil in Russia is way bigger. In Venezuela is way bigger. In Saudi Arabia, of course. And so, it's quite expensive to explore in Kazakhstan. Kashagan is a very expensive, because of the geological situation, an expensive oil field to explore. And so you need around $62 per barrel to earn money with it. And $62, that is not in reach for the next months again. We with the intervention of the OPEC, we brought the oil price was brought back from $21 during the Corona crisis in March, April, back to 40, but in the foreseeable time, I don't see 60 or something like that. And not for the longer run, maybe for a very short moment. But so what I want to tell you is it's not a good idea to rely on oil. And when you look through the economy, it's still a lot of investment coming from abroad on oil. When you look at 2005, go to 2017, but there are also other investments now taken in Kazakhstan, and that is a good news. For example, efficiency seeking, you see this here, efficiency seeking it's 24% of the investments, and not only oil, which has been in the year 2005 nearly 80%. So when we look a little bit on the export-import structure of Kazakhstan, then you see that Europe, even without Russia, has a tremendous influence on the economy of Kazakhstan. 61% of the exports from Kazakhstan go to the European Union, or let's say to Europe, not to the European Union. Europe without Russia. Might be also states which are not part of Europe, European Union. So, also from the imports, the biggest part comes from Europe. And so I think Europe should be a part of the change, and part of the change of Kazakhstan. So now you see the world map. The world map about the foreign investments in Kazakhstan. It's still too much based on oil. You see, the biggest abroad is Netherlands, the Netherlands, and the reason is very simple. It's Royal Shell, and the second biggest investor is United States, Chevron and ExxonMobil, and so and then sooner or later comes France, and France means Total, and but also, and that is a good news, also Alstom, and when we go to Switzerland, it's mining, which invests in Kazakhstan. And so I think we need to diversify the economy, and that's absolutely urgent. It cannot be only based on resources, because fossil resources, as I said, are under pressure because of the climate change programs. And of course, if there is an economic crisis, as we have to face it in our time and in this moment, it's ruining the whole society and economy. That is why I call it the boon and the bane. It's of course, it's one of the biggest advantages that you are resources rich, but it's also one of the biggest threats. So let's have a look, where can the sectors of development be? I have chosen 4 of them where I would say Kazakhstan is a tremendous potential, and that we might discuss if we can go, or if we might go in this direction. The first is energy. Kazakhstan has a lot of knowledge on energy because of this fossil history and exploration history, and of course to turn it into energy. But there's a tremendous potential in Kazakhstan upside. The classical and the fossil energies, and I think you should use your technical knowledge to go in that direction. So the role of renewable energies in the transformation process, as I said, there is a huge potential. There's also can be a huge demand in developing the country in the country. When solar energy and wind energy is developed, but also there is a good chance to sell stuff which is connected with renewable energies to other countries. For example, maybe biomass to Germany. In Germany, we have a lot of debates, even disputes on biomass. Arne, of course, who lives there, knows that. We go into more and more into energy plants. And because our territory is a little bit smaller than yours, we have these conflicts. If corn should be planted, for example, as energy plant to make electricity from corn, or to feed it for the animals. And so we have always a dispute of monocultures, corn fields over cornfields everywhere. And we have the discussion about, of course, when we have a limited space, what should we plant? Energy plants, where the farmers get a good amount of money from. Animal food, of course, also vegetables for the citizens. So, and biomass, for example, corn, rapeseed, other things could also be planted in Kazakhstan and sold to Germany and maybe delivered by the logistics, which are new logistics options which come with the Silk Road. So hydropower is also something which can be developed, but of course hydropower, I'm a little bit careful with this because it brings, of course, neighborhood conflicts. And you know that none of the big rivers which going through Kazakhstan have their spring in Kazakhstan. They come from outside, the Irtysh, the Ili River, the Sudaya, they come always from other countries. And so, of course, there are neighborhood conflicts always connected with hydropower. The Kazakh government made a decision to develop renewable energies, which is good. There's a goal of 3% until 2020. There was 30% in 2030 and 50% in 2050. That sounds a little bit so similar and sounds good, but why I put it down to 10% was because there was, when they started and discussed 30%, there was this discussion about building up 2 nuclear power plants. And you know that there is a big debate and a lot of people are afraid of that. And so, but the government calculated the nuclear power to the green energy because it's emission free. And but I think there is a very strong will of the population against this. And if you calculate or decalculate the power which comes with the 2 power plants, then you are around 10% in 2030. But there is a tremendous potential in Kazakhstan, which is even way bigger than in Germany, especially when it comes to solar power. Look at this. What are the amounts of energy you can take from a panel, square meter per square meter, and that is way more than you can get in Germany from a square meter of solar panel. Germany is happy when we get that amount, what we can get in the northern part of Kazakhstan up to the bright areas. These are the most beneficial parts in Germany. Solar power around what we have in Astana, Karaganda, and so on. And then the middle of Kazakhstan and the south of Kazakhstan, there's way more potential than in Germany on it. And we see it realized in a couple of new projects. When there are investments, they are mostly huge. 50 megawatt in the Zambul area, 100 megawatt close to Karaganda, another 150 megawatt, and so on. These are huge parks, of course, yeah? And future investments. One of them is also from Germany, the one close to Karaganda. It's Goldbeck Solar, and yeah, I think we can hope for more of these investments because the sun is quite strong and brings good benefits. Wind is the same in Kazakhstan. Everybody who sits in Astana knows that, but there are a lot of other areas north of Kazakhstan, way to Ekibastus, which are very, very privileged with wind power. One of my last flights in Kazakhstan before the Corona crisis came was to Aktobe. I visited Badamsha. Badamsha is an investment 150 kilometers from Aktobe. 23 wind turbines of the bigger size is 3 to 4 megawatt each. So you can see it's in that moment it's also an investment what goes around 70, 80 megawatt. So quite good chances from the geography and from the conditions to invest in wind power. So what I would recommend on this is, of course, that we should start to decentralize energy supply and energy production in Kazakhstan. It can save a lot of money for the economy and can bring good investments. I just give you an example. We visited last summer Khorgos, the dry harbor at the border to China. And this infrastructure, what is there, this whole harbor and area and village which is close by, it receives its energy from the copper plant in Taldykorgan. And but Taldykorgan is 300 kilometers away from Khorgos. And so you have to build trafos, land lines, and all these things, assembly stations on the way to Khorgos, and that is really, really expensive and a big investment. You lose a lot of energy on the way through the land lines, and so it might be way more beneficial to organize a decentralized, have 1-2 wind turbines close to Khorgos, maybe with a backup, can be a gas turbine or whatever, and organize it decentralized and building landlines through the whole country. We need a rising awareness for energy efficiency in the population, make it cheaper, and that people learn not to waste energy. The earnings from fossil fuels, of course, you should use your fossil fuels to push renewable energies, but in the end, they have to fly alone. It's not useful to pay subventions over years, and it's okay at the moment that Eni buys for the investors, so it's reliable for the investors that they buy the electricity from the suppliers and give them an amount of money after a tender, of course, and gives them the money for the electricity, so that they are privileged in the net. but it's not useful to pay subventions forever and ever. And so we have to find a kind of system what makes it possible for the renewable energies to be beneficial and to be able to be beneficial on their own and to survive on their own. So what we need from what I think is a steering system or a price system for energy which have steering effects. We need to increase efficiency also in the industry and learn not to waste only energy. And of course, and because we will come a couple of times to that, we need, of course, a digitalized energy system, smart grids and all these things, because that help to save energy. And of course, it is when it's in a decentralized system done perfectly, it's also an option to produce these kind of things and to export them, and gives also a digitization a new chance. So when we're talking about energy prices must realize things. First of all, energy security. They should be affordable. Energy must be affordable, and they should have an environmental effect. Yeah? So that means that the prices must be cost covering. Yeah, it does not. It's not useful to pay subsidies to bring them down from what we have. They should be, as I said, affordable. Everybody needs energy, but they also should have a steering effect. That means people should not waste away. And Kazakhstan has one of the lowest energy prices at all. For example, a kilowatt hour of electricity costs around 3 euro cents, 3.2, 3.5 dollar cents, and that is way below the production when we talk about renewables. In Germany, at the moment you get electricity from wind turbines around 6 cents per kilowatt hour. Solar power is a little bit more expensive, so you cannot pay 3 for that. And it's a call for waste, of course. Yeah? People waste away energy in Kazakhstan in huge amounts. The heating energy is calculated by square meters, and people open and close the windows to regulate the temperature. And the same as water. Water is around between 25 euro cents to 50 euro cents a cubic meter. The price in Germany is around eight times higher. And so people just waste away. They let the water run. Yeah, I have a nice story about that. I used, when I travel through Kazakhstan, and before Corona, I did it really a lot, every week. From time to time, I come to the same hotel. And I had one hotel in Pavlodar, and I was arguing at the reception that my water was cold and no warm water. And they just said, oh, there is warm water. Just let it run for 20 minutes and it comes. And in this moment, I remembered that they told me the same thing 2 years ago when I was in that same room in the same hotel 2 years ago. And so they didn't repair the water pipes for 2 years, minimum 2 years. And it doesn't matter because it's more expensive to repair the water pipes than just let it run. And so it shows absolutely that the energy price system is not where it should be. And you can also find it here in the graph from the World Bank. You see when it comes to the national income per capita, Germany's income is 5 times higher than the one in Kazakhstan. And when you look at the carbon emissions, you see that the carbon emission in Kazakhstan per capita is 1.5 times higher than in Germany. And so you can see that it's a little bit that the system should be overworked, let's say it this way. And in this moment, there's a tremendous potential in Kazakhstan to generate growth, efficiency. Kazakhstan can be an example for efficiency, and of course, and when they have efficient techniques, they can also sell them. Next field of growth, agriculture. Agriculture is the way underestimated hidden champion in Kazakhstan from my point of view. When you look at this table, here are the statistics of the Committee of the Ministry for National Economy. You see how that developed from the middle of the 90s until into our days. That on the one hand, the output of agriculture is increasing because of better techniques. There are even more modern techniques now used in Kazakh the economy and the agriculture economy. But the part of the GDP is decreasing and decreasing is decreasing from 26% of the GDP coming from the agriculture in the middle of the 90s down to 5% in our days. And so there is, it is a little bit that they stopped half on the way to push the agricultural industry because it's because they focus too much on oil. That was a privileged economy, and the agricultural economy had to stay behind. And you could see this in the amount of investments in to do the next step and close the technological gap to the Western countries like Germany. And but I think it should be done because it's really, really a huge potential what we find in agriculture in Kazakhstan. Kazakhstan is in our days one of the 10 biggest exporters of wheat, so of grain. But it's there could be many, many more other opportunities for investments and for generating growth. At the moment, as I said, mostly wheat is planted, but the opportunities to build, to plant, especially other things after the wheat period, before the wheat period, for example, beans or peas or something like this, also to support the soil is absolutely possible. And so we have what we established from Germany is an institution what is called the German Kazakh Agricultural Dialogue in 2009. They're still active in our days, and the reason is that in Germany we see the tremendous potential what Kazakhstan has in agricultural business, and you have to consider that we are running into a food crisis in the world. We have 8 billion people on Earth. In this moment we are talking, we will have 9 billion people in 15 years. And then 10 billion people, what should they all eat? And in Kazakhstan, there are a lot of opportunities to raise things and to plant things with less ecological bad effects. I will show you very soon. And good money can be made from it because we are running into a food crisis and try to solve these problems. Look at this, for example, when it comes to the question of raising animals. You see a lot of cows and cattle is here raised as well. It could be much more, or many more. The advantage in Kazakhstan to raise these animals in Kazakhstan is you have not to kill the rainforest for that. And that is a difference to Brazil or to Argentina, where they raise them at the moment and kill the rainforest on that way. And so, especially when it comes to what we call the big grass eaters, cattle, horses. Horse is a little bit of risk because not in every country they eat horse meat. So horse is, but of course cattle, sheep, and also pigs, of course, and they are also raised mostly in the area around Pavlodar and so on, and in the western parts there you see at the Russian border. There is also a tremendous potential for Kazakhstan to flourish. At the moment, the situation is like this, and that's a little bit weary. And there's still a potential. Kazakhstan is a meat importer. You see, production of meat, you see the consumption of meat, and the consumption of meat is bigger, not much, but a little bit bigger than the production. So Kazakhstan does not export very much of the meat. You see the green line and you see the yellow line of imports. They import much more meat than they produce, and then they export, and that is from my point of view unnecessary, because the meat quality in Kazakhstan is very good, because the animals are raised mostly in the steppe. They walk, they eat. In Germany, they are mostly in the stable. And I'm living in both countries, and I can tell you that the meat quality is better in Kazakhstan. And so it can be an asset for growth when you use this. The next is digitization sector. I put it exactly in this part here, directly after agriculture, because part of the digitization should be connected with agriculture. You will raise the big potential what Kazakhstan has in the agricultural sector when you do the last steps of the development of agriculture, and that means high-tech and digital farming. And from that, there is also a lot of business in the digitization possible, because if you invent things, that means autonomic driving of the farming machines, then automatization and digitization of the tools of the farming machine. We have, for example, one project from Germany in Kazakhstan, which is called Amazon. Not the one where you buy all your stuff, Amazone, with an E in the end. And they developed a machine, for example, which recognizes chlorophyll. So they this machine just sprays fertilizer, water, or other things it should bring on the field just where the plant is, and not all over the field and flooded everything. It's just sprays water, fertilizer, protection, or whatever it is. It's just sprays where the plant is, because it recognizes where the plant is. And so it brings efficiency, and this kind of technique must be developed. And when you use it in a developed agriculture economy, of course, you can help to develop these kind of things, and that can be a good business. Digitalized farming, a good harvester. We have KAS as a big harvest company, harvester producing company. They are rolling laboratories, and of course all these technique, which is completely connected with the farm area. Where does the fertilizer go? Where does the water go? And brings the data from the soil to the they collect from the soil to the farmhouse. Yeah, all these things, these interfaces, the interfaces you need when you do automatic driving on the fields. That has to be developed, and when you use this technique in a high-tech farming industry, you also can help to develop it and then sell it, of course. Yeah. So there's a digital strategy made by the government of Kazakhstan, Kazakhstan 2050, and you see that is where the economy should go in Kazakhstan. And you see new human capital, and of course, technological innovation and digitization. They are one of the biggest fields of development and something they focus on. Of course, other things is fighting corruption, which is absolutely rule of law, which is also very, very important, and modernization of the public mindset. It also belongs to the public sector, of course, means, of course, in the end, e-governance. But let's stick a little bit with human capital and technological innovation. So for me, I'm a supporter, of course, of digitization and digitalized industry. For me, it's a little bit a question in which direction it goes. And for Kazakhstan, from my point of view, it should be connected with that sectors where you are strong, where you're good. So agriculture, there will be later energy, also digitalize technologies and energy. Later, I will tell you a little bit about logistics and digitization. So these are, from my point of view, important things. And there are some expert meetings from the Forbes on Kazakhstan. From time to time, partly I agree with it, and partly I do not. I'm absolutely confirmed when it comes to describe the potential of Kazakhstan and the will to modernize, even with the help of Samuel Kazina. Yes, I am not, and you can, I think it's absolutely obvious that Kazakhstan has a good skilled workforce. Yes, on the one hand, but the natural resources, that the demands will remain high, I think that is a mistake, and I would not rely on that. So, digitization should bring efficiency in the production process, but digitization is something what covers the whole society. It's connected with policy. It's so politics is a big partner in it. Economy, that means that companies should be involved in the process. Of society, that means every person, and science, of course. Only if they all work together appropriately, digitization will in the end be a success. That makes it an absolute challenge, but that makes it also, gives also a chance to Kazakhstan, because this digitization process in the world, everybody thinks he's too late in this process. I think not. Because everybody's looking in the direction of China and say, oh, they are so far away, we are so late. I don't think so, because no country sees as an integrative process. It's not only about high speed and high tech and the newest digitization technique. It's a whole society process. You have to turn a whole society into this digitization mode, and even China has not done it. They are very offensive in that thing, but I cannot see that China reached the end of digitization. I cannot see that United States did it, Germany did it not. So Kazakhstan has to speed up, have to go in a clear strategy, in a clear direction, but you can make it. So what it means that politics, the political class has to do their jobs. That means standard setting, laws and norms, of normative acts to guide the digitization in the right direction. The economy have to turn and to offer workplaces on this and on digitization. The society have to deliver good skilled workers, and good skilled workers the society only can deliver in relation with science, when science is brought to education. Yeah, you need good educated workers to run these digitization. Oh, and that is a question now where we should go. That is one thing where Kazakhstan is at the moment going. I'm so medium happy with this, I must say. No, I must say I'm unhappy with this. It is cryptocurrency. It's an absolute hype at the moment in Kazakhstan. Yeah, this discussion about the cryptocurrency mining farms. But from my point of view, maybe, but everything I say is for the discussion later. Yeah, maybe I'm too conservative for that. That might be one thing. I think from my point of view, it's not a big deal. It's a fire of straw from my point of view. I would not go into cryptocurrencies too much. For me, it's a little bit more gambling, I must say. But I think there are a lot of smart guys here on the in the seminar to contrast this what I'm saying now. So please don't hesitate to criticize me in the end. But for me, it's more gambling, because if there is a currency with no national economy in the back, I don't know what kind of currency in the end that should be. The national currency substitute for the substitute of a national economy for a cryptocurrency is a network behind that, but nobody knows really what the network is about. It can be huge, it can be strong, it can be weak, because it's anonymous. It is so it's a little bit a gamble, and you see the hype on the Bitcoin as it started at the beginning, and what kind of prices it rose, and where the Bitcoin is today. And I think the hype on the Bitcoin, which is the most well-known cryptocurrency. There are thousands existing, but the Bitcoin is the most well-known one. I think the hype is a little bit over, and I don't know if I would run behind it. You see the debate about the Libra, what should be brought in the market by Facebook. Okay, Facebook is a strong network. If Facebook backs this kind of currency, it is an amount of money behind that, which normally mid-sized states have, yeah, mid-sized countries have. But you see the results, the reactions of a huge numerous amount of national banks on the investigation of the Libra. They say they will fight it. Yeah, they will not accept it, and I'm okay. For me, there might be other views on this, but if I would go into cryptocurrencies too much and say this is the direction where our digitization attempt should go, I'm not so sure about that. And sorry, maybe I'm just too conservative. The next is, of course, logistics. Logistics has a tremendous potential, and it can be, and that means if Kazakhstan manage it, to get some logistic hubs in the country. And that means logistics hubs which guides the whole supply chain there is a lot of potential with it, because the amount which is planned on containers goes up to 1.7 million containers to the west. And of course, if Kazakhstan can organize the whole logistics, that means from the supply chain management, from the supply chain manager to the truck driver or to the locomotive driver and back, inclusive the planning, the custom relations, and what is around. It's a field of growth. But what is much more interesting for me is that these containers do not go only in one direction, filled, yeah, and empty in the other direction. The Silk Road can be a door opener. It can be a door opener for bringing industry to Kazakhstan, but that recommends or that asks for an equal partnership between China and the West. Yeah, because that all the containers go full in the western direction and go back empty, that is not a big deal. That is a deal, but just a small one, and we could do better. But that means we have to sustain the pressure which comes from China, because they just want to sell. They think they send all the stuff to the West and don't want to take anything, except of resources, of course. But that is not a big deal. And that means that, from my point of view, there should be an alliance made between the West and Kazakhstan, and also, especially with Germany, to negotiate with China. Either they accept the goods coming from the other direction, or this project cannot happen. Yeah. So, Central Asia. I visited numerous conferences as long as I'm in Kazakhstan, which were called the Great Game. Always, Central Asia is a great game. Central Asia is a great game. For me, the question is it about great game about Central Asia, about Kazakhstan, or with Kazakhstan? And that is absolutely the reason why I put this slide at this moment. Because if you just follow what comes from China and let them guide this process, it will be about you. It will be not with you. Because then they set the rules, for their benefits, and then and you are just the waiter behind the curtain. And so you have to play an active role. You have to say what you want, and you absolutely have to say what you not accept. And do it with a strong partner. I think European Union could and Germany could be, because we have the same problems with that Silk Road project, and I think we should cooperate on that. So, looking at Central Asia, because there's always is Central Asia, is Central Asia, can it be unite in a kind of trade? I think, or in a kind of, there was a discussion years ago about a union, a Central Asian Union. I think it's not realistic. When you see the GDPs between Kazakhstan and Kyrgyzstan, when you see per capita and so on, the difference between Germany as the strongest member state of the European Union and Bulgaria is 1 to 5. In Central Asia, it's up to 1 to 20. And between Kazakhstan and the others. And so I think it's not realistic with such a gap. It would be a kind of subsidies and subvention union, but I think it's not realistic to do it with 5 states. But of course, there's a question about Uzbekistan. And in Germany, when I look at the German economy at the moment, it is that everybody is absolutely enthusiastic about Uzbekistan. They opened up a little bit. not in political things, I think, but in economy things, and that is what the economy interests. They don't care about human rights or about what the Secret Service is still doing. What they caring about is the currency regime, which was a big threat to the economy, because it was not able, or there was nearly no chance to turn the zoom into dollar under Karimov's time, only in a very limited places for the then connected costs and benefits only on the side of the ones who makes the exchange. And it struggled, and the economy of Uzbekistan. Yeah, but now they are waking up, and when you see delegations, economy delegations coming from Germany going to Central Asia, they all visit at the moment Uzbekistan, because on the one hand there's a bigger population, and of course they have a trader and manufacturer history and society. And you can see that, and so on the one hand, it can be a nice cooperative partner, Uzbekistan, if you manage it in the right way, but it's absolutely a competitor. And that means that Kazakhstan has to speed up with their reforms. I don't want to see that the investors, the potential investors, turn from Kazakhstan and move away and go to Uzbekistan. And the countries are not so big that both big by population, I mean, that there will be one, that there will be two plants or manufacture plants from a mid-sized company built. They build it in one place, and I would love to see it in Kazakhstan. And so you have to speed up with the reforms because Uzbekistan is waking up. So let's come a little bit to the advantages and the challenges. I think the biggest advantage of Kazakhstan is the young population. Look at this kind of population. In Germany, we would be wet in tears if we would have it like this, yeah. But tears of luck, yeah, and not tears of sadness or so. We would be very happy if we would have a pyramid like this. Yeah. Look how many young people are living in Kazakhstan, males and females. You see, it's nearly ideal. Yeah? It's that 25% are around younger than 20. Yeah, and look how many are in the working ages, in the middle ages, below 50. That is the biggest part of the society, and so you have a tremendous potential, and that is a difference to the states around. Especially the big ones. China is an older growing society, even if it's very big, but it's older growing. And Russia is an older growing society. Germany is an older growing society. So you should use the young people as an asset. You do it quite well in the last years. So the Boleshak stipendium, for example, is of course a big asset. You see from 2000 from 94 to 2018, more than 13,000 people went abroad and learned in different fields. I think it's a very smart move, this Boleshak program, because you get a good benefit from it as long as you manage it to get the people back, and that they do not stay where they studied as long as they come back to Kazakhstan. So offering the program is one thing, but also attract them to come back when they finish their studies abroad. And you can see where they mostly go. Lots of them go to the West, what I like very much: United States, Canada, United Kingdom, and Great Britain and Ireland. I must say that, of course, I would love to see some more in Germany. And so I use this slide a little bit for a commercial to study in Germany. We have the reason why Kazakhs study in United States, Canada, and Great Britain is, of course, is the English language, which they mostly learn in school and university. But in Germany, we have for nearly all common educations, we have English running programs. So it's not necessary to join the universities in Great Britain or United States. You get a good education at a German university as well, and you can get it in English. It's no problem if you don't speak German. If you speak German, we love it, of course. Yeah. If you speak a little Bayerisch, we love it more. No, not we from the north, but the ones in towns in the south. So, but it's not necessary to learn to know German for studying in Germany. If you want to study economy, technical science is completely international. So it's you think about going to a German university. It can save also when you need a little longer because studies are hard. It saves then in this moment a lot of money because the schools are mostly public in Germany, the universities. They have not these high student fees that you have to pay, which you have to pay in Great Britain or United States. They are a little bit doing more aggressive marketing because they need money and because they are student fees run and our universities get the money from the taxpayers. And so they do not do so much advertising than the English and American ones do. So yeah, absolutely, the young people is a big asset, and the education is one of the defining things to bring Kazakhstan in a market. And there are huge chances with it. There's also a little bit change needed when it comes, and that's what I call put on the side of the challenges when we talk about the political system, because rule of law and anti-corruption, that is one of the main things what Western companies demand when they are looking for a production, new production, or when they look for an investment. And so we need a stronger role of the parliament in Kazakhstan in the end. The government should not be able to control itself, because when the government controls itself, it helps itself a little bit, and then you will not be able to, you might have some successes on fighting corruption, and you have definitely some successes on fighting corruption, but you will not reach the biggest goal because the government controls the government. There's always a lot of friendship, networking, and help each other become on that way, and so we also have to talk a little bit about some changes into a more parliamentarism. So now I cannot talk about, before I come to the political recommendations at the end, I cannot leave out in our times Corona, because Corona, if it is managed inappropriately, it can be a game changer for decades. This is a graphics coming from the World Bank. You see, it is a table which shows that countries with a lot of containment, which put a lot of containment into fighting the Corona and what happened to the economy. So, and you see, and that is not very, not very surprising. Of course, when there's a lot of containment of politics into the crisis, it lowers down the infection rates for a while. Yeah, so the less infections because of the intervention of the government. But of course, the recession is deeper in when there's a lot of containment of the government that makes the crisis worse, we have to say as well. So, and I gave a lot of interviews in Kazakhstan on this crisis, especially in March and April and also in May. And at the beginning, I must say, I also in front of the German government, I was quite, I was supporting for the measures of the government, fighting Corona, lockdowns and so on. But I always said you can only just do it for a while. And from my point of view, we have the time later to discuss. We have, in the end, minimum 20, 40 minutes to, 40 minutes for discussion. I know that it's critical, but I am one of the big supporters of opening up the scene and not of recessions, repressive lockdowns anymore. I can tell you why. The reason is, from my point of view, that the virus is faster, no matter what we do. And if you see at the moment the countries which were very strict, the virus is coming back. Singapore was very strict at the beginning. They have huge number of cases now. In South Korea, it's coming back. In China, it's coming back. I think, by the way, China is cheating during the whole process with the numbers. From my point of view, the strategy has to be changed up from mid-April, when it was clear that we will have vaccine within 1 year. So, and when you look at the numbers, the white part, that is where we are at the moment, after 3 months in the crisis. The numbers are doubling every 6 weeks. Yeah. The official number, when you go to these worldometer coronavirus, you'll find 10 million infected people at the moment. But every virolog tells you that for every case you find, there are 10 hidden cases, which you're not finding. So in fact, we do not have 10 million infected people, we have 110 infected people. I believe this number 1 to 10 for Germany, I believe it for Kazakhstan. By the way, I don't believe it for India and some other states. I think this number is quite higher. They might have 1 to 20 or something like this. United States is 1 to 10, what the virolog said, yeah. So let's calculate with 1 to 10. Yeah? Just let's calculate with 1 to 10. Then, from my point of view, the numbers are like this. We have 110 million cases, in fact, not 10 million, 110. And that means that at mid of August, so 6 weeks from now, we have 220 million cases. End of September, we will have 440 million cases. Mid of November, we will have 880 million cases. End of the year, 1.7 billion. Mid of February, 3.5 billion. And that means that we reach in April, when we should have the vaccine, we should reach 80% of the population. And that is a moment when the virus cannot spread anymore, because too many are affected and they find it finds not new hosts. That means for me in the end, unfortunately, that is sorry what I have to say, no matter what we do, it will go through. Because if we have the vaccine, we need another 2 years to vaccinate everybody and to have enough vaccine stuff. And what would you like to do during this 3 years up from today? Closing schools, universities, and all these things for 3 years? Keeping people at home in a lockdown for 3 years? From my point of view, all that does not work. I think we have to live with that virus a little bit. I think everybody have to calculate his own risk, maybe with the help of the doctor. At the moment it is like this. Individual risks are a little bit calculated by former diseases you had, age, blood group, other things. And it seems to be a little bit a combination from that. And then people should freely decide if they protect themselves a little more or less. But I think with big shutdowns and so we will not reach that goal. That's from my point of view. I know it's a little bit something what people from time to time makes angry when I tell this, but I think that the virus is faster than we are. What should be done? That is my recommendations, and then we come to the discussion. So, of course, Germany should cooperate more with Kazakhstan because we have 250 companies, German companies here, and so we should use that asset. And the chances are way better than before. If I do not calculate Corona, it blocks, of course, at the moment everything. But we had a problem in the economy relations between Kazakhstan and Germany. It was a case of an investment insurance, HERM as it was called, and we solved it after 11 years last summer. So long-running credits for Kazakhstan are possible again, and that should leverage and that should help the relations between Germany and Kazakhstan to flourish. As I said, I think it would have happened if not Corona would have come up. But after the Corona crisis, I hope that Kazakhstan is a target even for big German investments. So we have a couple of big companies here, but as I said, it could be way more. So what would I recommend? I would recommend first of all to put more life in what we have. We have a German-Kazakh resource partnership, which has in one sentence resources to Germany and high-tech industry materials to Kazakhstan. It was a little bit forgotten for years. It was signed in 2012 and it laid around for 6 years. Then the first investments or the first projects has been started. We should broaden this partnership a little bit. Yeah, high-tech should not mean high-tech mining stuff. It can also be help on digitization and on complete other things. And if we broaden that a little bit, we should really intense the cooperation. But that's not the only thing. There are a lot of other things. I would highly recommend to develop Samrul Kazina and more in the direction to invest in foreign high-tech industry companies. The Chinese are doing that very much around the world, and why should others not? You should have a strategy and say, okay, these are the areas we want to work on. Don't spread around in 20 fields or sectors. Go on the 2 or 3 sectors, as shown: agriculture, logistics, also where you can do a good job, and then invest there, yeah, to get on the high tech and first class level, and invest to develop your country. As I said, digitization initiative, including maybe a model factory, but in these growth sectors. Yeah, as I said, logistics, agriculture, and there is even one other factor in, for example, in pharmaceuticals. There can be. I would look to the south a little more when I would be acting on the behalf of the Kazakh government. The dependency to China is too big, and I would bring India more into play to equalize this dependency out. And that can be done also via Iran, for example. And I know that it's not easy, because Iran is not an easy partner, but it's possible. I would build up a structure like what we have, the German Kreditanstalt für Wiederaufbau, where you can get a financing for startups. In Germany, you can get financing for startups 50% by a public bank and 50% by a private bank, which lowers the risks because of the state guarantee for the banks, and that lowers tremendously the interest rates for startups. And that means that our startups, they get around 3-4% interest rate for their money, to pay for their money, and not 10 or 12%, which brings a startup close to bankruptcy very soon. The next is we would focus on German mid-sized companies as a target group. It's not the big players like Daimler or BMW about to come, but we have a lot of car parts companies, very high-tech companies in the hand of private owners, which in the long run might see benefits in working with Kazakhstan. Kazakhstan, for example, accepts intellectual property. China does not. And so it can be something very good. Also a good investment frame for others, for German companies. So I would definitely simplify the tax system in Kazakhstan, because you have the flat rate. At the moment, you still have it. We will see after the corona crisis if taxes will be risen. But at the moment, 10% are absolutely attractive, but they are flashed with or flooded away with bureaucracy and useless bureaucracy for a lot of time. And there's definitely should be a lot of attempts made to solve this. Implementation of the dual education, absolutely for the handicraft workers. The Adenauer Stiftung is carrying on the project from the KAZ, and you should definitely finish and bring the dual education alive, because one of the defining things if Kazakhstan will flourish or not is the workforce. And if you have good workforces on all levels, on the academic levels and on the dual education level, that is one of the big, would be one of the big assets. Then, of course, for the academic level, strengthen your internationality, international internships and international studies, masters and so on. We talked about that when we discussed Polishak. As I said, the BI, the Belt and Road Initiative, must be a project for Kazakhstan as well. It cannot stay as a Chinese project abroad. It must be a project which is also owned by Kazakhstan and which is also owned by all the countries on the way, and not only the idea of one country. Maybe yeah, and of course, a full-scale reform of the education, which of course focuses on foreign languages and on internationality in the MINT direction, so in mathematics, engineering, natural sciences, and technology, MINT. And of course, finding your sector of business where you want to earn your money. Kazakhstan is a society of 18 million people. It's not China with 1.4 billion. China has to be good at everywhere, but 18 million people, it needs 2 or 3 champions in the industry, and then you have a good industry environment. You have not to be good in every sector. We managed some, I mentioned some, as I said, agriculture, digital, but I would also mention pharmaceuticals. There are a lot of pharmaceutical companies who look for a new environment of research, especially research, and where they mostly do the research, they also do the investments. Mostly because a lot of companies in the pharmaceutical area, they are suffering from restrictions in this area. So it was longer than as I wanted, but we have still a little more than half an hour to discuss. Thank you very much for listening, and I'm waiting for your questions.
So I think participants can either ask in the chat to ask a question, or they can just unmute themselves and ask directly. And while people, I think, are probably typing, if I may, can I also ask a question?
Yeah, of course.
Yeah, so you've mentioned about the education and international education specifically, but I think there is obviously a problem of brain drain, like when you send people by, say, Bolshak, and then they might stay there or might move to the countries, and whether that's something that is good, or do you think that's a big problem, or are there any ways we can combat that issue?
First of all, I think we have to learn to calculate and to count correctly. And we had a big debate when we presented a book on the transformation of the economy, especially on that point. There were a lot of people arguing and said the young people, they leave the country. I said at that time, you have not to count them only when they leave, you have also to count them when they come back. I think one of the big assets of Kazakhstan is the strong family structures. I think a lot of Kazakhs after a while want to come back because of their families. And so for me, it's not that big a brain drain what others country have to suffer, but it is a brain drain. Yeah, of course, when they have the chance to study in the United States or in Germany, and then they from time to time see the society, see of course that they can earn more money than in Kazakhstan. From time to time, they try to stay or want to stay. And good experts, especially in technology, are welcome everywhere. So Germany in that moment does not say no. Yeah, and so I would of course, the asset is that the family, the call of the family comes and they come back. But I think also it is one of the calls to change the country. Of course, they learn about the Western societies. The Western societies are more liberal. People who have studies on a certain level, they love liberal atmospheres. You can even see that in Germany, yeah? As in nearly every country, like in Kazakhstan, people are more conservative on the countryside than in the university cities. The university cities are the most liberal areas we also have in Germany. And of course, when they enjoyed this liberal community, society, then they from time to time want to stay and say, I will not go back in the countryside where I'm from. So, but there are two things. There is a pull factor, is a family, and another pull factor should be that the change of the society might show them that they are needed in their country, that they are welcome in their country, and they also, of course, can bring in their style of living, yeah, and that they are accepted with their style of living. And then I think there is a chance to bring them back.
Thank you. So if I'm getting you correctly, you think that the social connections might keep people here. And if I may add a little bit to this, I also think that sometimes the issue is that people don't really see where they can work in Kazakhstan with the education they have. So I think maybe solving that would also help. Do you think that's correct?
Yeah, yes, of course. So that means that some the things we recommended, they have not to be done one after the other. They have to be some things happening at the same time. Yeah. So that means, of course, when you have good educated people, they want an ambitious job. That means during the time they are gone, you have to decide in this Boloshak program, and a Boloshak program, as every stipendium program, the KAS also has a stipendium program, should have a following up program, should follow their stipends and say, okay, what we want to do with them when they are finished. Yeah, so ideal, in an ideal world, it would be like this, that when you send somebody with the money from the Boloshak program abroad, you have an idea what you want to do with him when he comes back. Yeah, so what can be done is, of course, is that you say, okay, we go for maybe machinery engineers, that they have a perspective. Okay, we want to build up a machinery company in our country, and when you are finished, you will find a job there to help to build it up. And so I would not just send people out. I would also make a strategy what to do with them when they come back.
So I think there are two questions in the chat. First one says, regarding the data about meat import-export, did data take into account only raw meat or meat products as well?
The import-export, it's agriculture. It was just meat.
And the next question is...
there was one statistic. I show you that you are consuming more meat than you produce. That's just about meat.
And the next question is, do you see the corruption as the main threat to the development of the potentials mentioned?
It's a question whom you are addressing. If you say we are a Western country, and for Kazakhstan, it's a big problem is, I'm now 5 years in Kazakhstan, and I recognize Kazakhstan as the most Western and most open country of the whole region. If I see people like you, you turned your head into the West. You are interested in Europe, you're interested in Germany and other things. And especially these companies coming from there, when they ask about, when you give them a top 10 list, what are the most important things for you? Number one is always rule of law and fighting corruption. The problem is, for them, there's a complete change in the mindset in these companies, by force, of course, during the last decades. 25 years ago in Germany, when you paid bribes, you could reduce your taxes. When you mentioned this in your tax declaration, that you had to pay bribes somewhere in Africa to get the job done. In our days now, 25 years later, we have compliance departments in our companies. You do not get a tax refund; you get sacked when you pay bribes. And you are not touched on your shoulders by your boss and say, "Oh, good, you did a good job." He fires you. The reason is because of these things like corruption. German companies, American companies, and others, they paid high fees after court cases. Siemens and Deutsche Bank in the United States, they paid millions of dollars because of these kind of things, and they learn from it. And these big companies, they have compliant departments, and when somebody starts paying bribes, he's done. Yeah, it's the end of the career. And if you look in the other direction, China, they don't care about that. So I cannot say it in general, but they pay bribes, definitely, and they pay it in huge amounts. They don't care about this. But I know that you, from your mindset, are a Western-orientated society, and you want to go to the West. And so it is, of course, a problem for Western investment because, as I said, the number one of the top 10 list of you can ask every kind of investor. They tell you rule of law and corruption. They are afraid of losing their property by these kind of corruptive networks, and that is what they ask for.
So there is a follow-up question on about the meat. So it says, where does the excess meat went then? Because it seems like import and production is greater than the consumption.
Yeah, where does it go? It is imported for, and when it is imported, it goes directly on the table. Yeah. For example, you also when you go to a supermarket in Kazakhstan, if you want, you can get Angus beef. And Angus beef is mostly from Argentina. Yeah. Go through a supermarket. Just look where the products are from. You can, of course, you can find apples from Uzbekistan. That's also important, by the way. But I found in my supermarket in Iowa, I found apples from Argentina. Yeah, and the meat is the same. Of course, you also buy meat from South America, beef, for example. By the way, fish is not vegetarian food; it's also meat. And the fish, of course, mostly comes from outside. Every salmon, yeah, they are all they're all imported, yeah. And yeah, and then the tremendous potential is on the other hand is there, but it has to be developed. And the tremendous potential, for example, means they are the one raising pigs, for example. There's some companies planning this and selling them to China. Yeah, they love them sour sweet. Okay.
The next question is, could you please elaborate on projects of Kazakhstan-German partnership?
Kazakhstan-German what?
Partnership.
Partnership. Yeah, for example, what I have in mind is, and that is a case of negotiation, of strong negotiations we have to face. We have all, but we have to be strong on that. For example, Germany has a very strong and the biggest car part industry in the world. We have big car manufacturers, but the car part industry is even bigger. Bosch is the biggest car part industry in the world. Continental is the second biggest. The third biggest is ZF, and they're all German. So, and why is it not possible? I always ask this. Why is it not possible in a partnership with Kazakhstan to produce car parts in East Kazakhstan for Volkswagen in Urumqi? There's a Volkswagen manufacturing in Urumqi, Xinjiang region in China. The reason is very simple, because China does not accept the car parts, because they say we want 80% of the value chain done in China. But that's the question of negotiation. You have to tell them when they want to go through your country, you have to tell we don't accept this. Yeah, you have to accept our stuff as well. We have some car experiences in Kazakhstan as well. There is Asia Motor, for example, or Asia Motor in Özgemen. There is Kostanay, where Kias and so are done. And so there is experiences with this. Why cannot car parts be produced in Kazakhstan? And I think German companies would like to do it, because a lot of car part companies, especially Bosch and even the smaller ones, we have these big three, right? We have a couple of hundred more smaller ones. They are always afraid of getting rid of their knowledge. And they're especially afraid about getting rid of their knowledge in China. So from my point of view, it would be a big deal. And it's logistically, it's no problem to deliver that stuff from East Kazakhstan via Dostik to Urumqi. That's not a thing. The only thing is that Chinese don't let it in, and that is a question of negotiations. So Kazakhstan has its boon and ban, as I said, Yeah, the boon and ban of Kazakhstan is the terminal in Liaoyang in China, which you get, and so what is your access to the sea, and of course you're afraid of getting rid of it. And Germany's boon and ban is the car industry. Always when we want to negotiate a little bit harder with China, our car part industry is in panic. Yeah, and say, oh, don't bring them up. Oh, they don't buy our Volkswagens anymore when they're angry. And so but I think that is a political decision to say, yes, we want to negotiate. Because otherwise they do what they want to do with us.
So, okay, I think we're pretty short on time at this point. So there are only two questions.
We have 20 minutes, 17 minutes left.
So the two questions are the first one concerning about Kazakhstan becoming an Asian tiger, and specifically about when it becomes so. And the next one is about what are the reasons why Kazakhstan should focus on India and Iran instead of other countries.
When what?
Why should Kazakhstan focus on India and Iran? What are the reasons of it, except for the GDP, or is the only reason?
So, Iran and I start with it. Iran and India. I'm talking about China and say you have to negotiate. That means two things to negotiate, that you are in a hard negotiating position. The first thing is you need strong partners. You are 18 million people, China is 1.4 billion. So you should have some partners. You should not go alone. European Union, Germany can be a partner. So first. Second is to negotiate something, there should be alternatives. Otherwise, there's nothing to negotiate about. And I told you that China has an access to, or gives Kazakhstan an access to the sea. So you should have another access to the sea. That you say, okay, in case that all the negotiations fail and that they say, we don't let you in anymore with that, you have another access. And this access can be via Iran. It's not necessary only to have access, it's also necessary to sell things. And there is India is a way easier market than China is. I told you the problem at the moment. China does not let things in. They say, we just want resources, bring us some pork meat, bring us some oil, some gas, some wheat, all these products with a low benefit, and we give your cell phones, and other things which are bringing the big benefit. So that is not an equalized balance. You said we should say, oh, but we also bring you car parts, which are also manufactured good and bring benefits. So, and they don't let it in. And so you should have another market. And India is a way easier market because India has a lot of demands. They are not so focused on exports. They are a little more focused on the binnah market. And so they are way easier to handle in this case. There are other difficulties. And so if you want to negotiate something, you have alternatives to get in a strong position. If there's no alternative, you have nothing to negotiate about. You're in a weak position. Second thing is, was about when Kazakhstan can become a big an Asian tiger. Yeah, very soon. It's not. As I said, the country is by the population not too big. And if you buy, for example, in this field, I mentioned some fields of growth. If you buy some defining companies or some high technology, bring it to Kazakhstan and let the people which should run it be educated in Germany. It is a question of a few years. They come back as good engineers, can run the techniques that you bought, and that can be a nucleus for a new for a new industry cluster. On this, you have enough people to do this, and you have enough enthusiastic young people to do this. When they come back with a good education, buy the key technology for that, and then let them do and develop it. The problem is from time to time that also the market in Kazakhstan is not setting the right incentives. For example, I know a lot of students, of course, from Nazarbayev University, and then there are even some of them our stipends, and even some of our stipends are engineers, for example. And then they finish their education, but they are not in engineering business. They are sales engineers and something like this. And then I'm very dissatisfied and say, you have to invent things. You have to construct new things. We want Kazakh products from you, and not say a sales engineer. Salesman business can an MBA do. Yeah, and then they say, yeah, but as a salesman, I earn more money than an engineer. And but that shows that the market sets the wrong wrong incentives. In a society where what should turn into or wants to turn into high technology, what the Kazakh government always tells us, yeah, an engineer should be better paid than a salesman, and not vice versa around.
Okay, thank you. Алия, думаете, на этом месте заканчивать или еще есть время на один вопрос?
Дело ваше, но вы уже 20 Minuten перебрали. Ja, 20 Minuten schon überzogen, ist natürlich eure Sache.
Ach so, ich dachte, wir hatten 2 Stunden.
90 Minuten waren geplant, 15:30 war das Ende. Aber ist nicht schlimm.
Ich hatte 2 Stunden gedacht.
Weil die Leute gehen langsam. Sind jetzt mittlerweile schon viele gegangen.
Ja, 24 sind wir da. Also, gut, dann sollten wir jetzt auch dann 1, 2 Fragen zum Abschluss und dann sollten wir es. 1, 2 questions.
Okay,
somebody wants urgently, otherwise we ended up. Sorry, I was misorientated about the time.
Okay, so there's one question here. Well, actually 2, but we have only time for one. Which further steps could be taken to accelerate the process of digitization? Do you think that cryptocurrency mining, for instance, could serve as an incentive to improve the digital infrastructure, as both companies and the government can observe immediate financial returns?
As I said in my lecture, I would connect the digitization development with that fields where Kazakhstan is really good. As I said, that's my personal thing. I'm not a big fan of cryptocurrencies, I must say. I think I said it clearly. So we found a couple of chapters of growth, and I would turn with the digitization in that direction, starting with energy connected with digitization, energy efficiency, new inventives in energy efficiency, in smart grids, in smart housing, in these things. Next, agriculture, high-tech agriculture, digitization, starting with automatic driving machines for weather and soil inspection and all these things. Even in the oil and mining industry, digitization revolution can help to lower the exploration costs and these things. Logistics and digitization. The production logistics, not to forget production logistics and digitization in that part. That is absolutely the whole supply chain management based on digitization. And when you develop these areas where what we talked about, and where Kazakhstan has a big potential with the help of digitization, I think that is the area where you need it to be really good. As I said, just doing farming is not good enough in Kazakhstan. Doing high-tech farming and digitalized farming, that would bring the big benefit, and then develop the digitization from that point where you need them and where you're good at.
Cool. Thank you so much, and I think we should wrap up at this point. Thank you, Mr. Helm, for agreeing for this, and thank you for Konrad Adenauer Stiftung. So I think we can end the meeting here, right?
Mm-hmm. Cool. Okay, thank you very much to everybody. All the best.
Thank you a lot.
Thank you,
yeah, thank you as well.
Thank you. Bye.
Closing the meeting.